see.
I got one for all of you guys. I know you've all given Kelsey her flowers at different points, but tonight was her 300th game in a fever uniform, so only her and Tamika have done.
GOAT talk. All right, Aliyah. Like I said, I don't know where she stand. Bro. Like,
Aliyah Boston just walked into the most dangerous minefield in the entire WNBA. And she did it with cameras rolling, reporters watching, and the entire basketball world waiting to see where her loyalty actually lands. The Indiana Fever's second-year forward just publicly called Kelsey Mitchell the GOAT, not Caitlin Clark, not the woman who dragged this franchise out of the absolute gutter and into the playoffs for the first time in 8 years. Not the rookie who shattered every attendance record, every merchandise record, every television rating the league has ever seen. Kelsey Mitchell, the same guard who spent 7 years losing, who never sniffed the postseason until Caitlin Clark arrived, who was playing in front of 4,000 people a night before the most electrifying player in women's basketball history put on a Fever jersey. And Aliyah Boston, the #1 overall pick. The former South Carolina champion, the player who is supposed to be Caitlin's running mate for the next decade, just told the world that Kelsey is the greatest of all time in Indiana. Let me say that again so every single person watching this video understands the gravity of what just happened. Aliyah Boston believes Kelsey Mitchell is the GOAT, not Caitlin, Kelsey, and I don't know where Aliyah Boston stands anymore. I have been covering this team since Caitlin Clark was drafted, and I have never heard a teammate create this kind of public division. You want to praise Kelsey? Fine. You want to celebrate her longevity? Absolutely. But when you use the word GOAT, when you elevate one player over the other in a franchise that is about to face the most brutal financial decision in WNBA history, you are picking a side. And Aliyah just picked hers. Welcome back. This is Hoops Central. And today we are ripping the doors off the most telling, most damaging, most insane public statement any Indiana Fever player has made all season. Because what Aliyah Boston just said on camera is going to force this front office into a corner they cannot escape.
So Dan Patrick, you know Dan Patrick, he had scheduled his staff, good staff, they had scheduled Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner of the WNBA. Now, all of us in this business have people bail on us. I've lost people, some people get busy, they forget whatever, or they just don't want to do it. Commissioners should not bail on scheduled interviews.
Before we get into exactly what Aliyah said and why it exposes the absolute fracture inside this locker room, you need to understand the financial nightmare the Indiana Fever are walking into. This is not speculation. This is not rumor. This is mathematical reality. The Fever cannot keep both Kelsey Mitchell and Caitlin Clark long-term under the current salary cap structure. Kelsey has been on one-year deals for the last 2 seasons. That Band-Aid solution is over. Done. Finished? If the Fever want to retain Kelsey Mitchell past this season, they have to commit max dollars, long-term security, and a contract that reflects her status as a veteran core piece. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark is going to be eligible for a supermax extension. The kind of money that reflects what she actually brings to this franchise, not just on the court, but in every single revenue stream this league has: attendance, merchandise, sponsorships, television deals. Caitlin Clark is the reason the WNBA is flying private jets now. She is the reason 3 expansion franchises just paid record fees to enter the league. She is the reason the Golden State Valkyries have a $1 billion valuation before they have even played a single game. So when Aliyah Boston stands in front of the media and calls Kelsey Mitchell the GOAT, she is not just giving a teammate a compliment. She is telling the front office and the entire league that she values longevity over impact. She values loyalty over results. She values the player who was here first over the player who changed everything. And that is a problem. That is a massive, glaring, undeniable problem. Because if Aliyah Boston does not know who the face of this franchise is, then the Fever have a locker room that is divided at its core. And divided locker rooms do not win championships. They do not retain superstars, they implode.
Think about it. When have you heard this about David Stern or Adam Silver or Roger Goodell? You only, this lady's the only one that runs around doing this stuff. She's the only commissioner that has not leaned into her biggest star. Adam Silver's leaning into Wemby and Shea Gilgeous and Ant-Man and all that. He leans into the stars. Roger Goodell leans in on Patrick Mahomes, leans in on Josh Allen. Like, they lean in on stars. This is the only commissioner that...
Let me walk you through exactly what Aliyah Boston said, because the words matter. The framing matters, the context matters, and when you hear it in full, you are going to understand why this is not just a harmless soundbite. This is a declaration. Aliyah was asked about Kelsey Mitchell's milestone. Kelsey just became the second player in Fever history to reach 300 games played. The only other player to hit that mark, Tamika Catchings, a legitimate legend, a Hall of Famer, a 4-time Olympic gold medalist. So the reporter asks Aliyah about Kelsey's longevity, her consistency, her place in fever history. And Aliyah does not just praise Kelsey, she elevates her, she calls her the GOAT. She says Kelsey deserves GOAT talk, not Caitlin Clark, who is sitting on the same roster, who just had one of the greatest rookie seasons in WNBA history, who eliminated Aliyah's undefeated South Carolina team in the national championship game. That same Caitlin Clark, but Aliyah calls Kelsey the GOAT. And this is the part that should terrify every Caitlin Clark fan watching this video, Aliyah doubles down. She talks about how long Kelsey has been wearing a fever jersey. She talks about continuity. She talks about showing up every single day. She talks about loyalty. And every single word is an indirect shot at Caitlin Clark. Because Caitlin has been here for 1 season. Kelsey has been here for 7. So when Aliyah praises longevity, she's implicitly saying that longevity matters more than impact. That showing up for 7 losing seasons matters more than transforming the entire franchise in 1 year. That wearing the jersey longer makes you more valuable than filling the arena, selling out the merchandise, and dragging your team to the playoffs for the first time in nearly a decade. Let me be entirely clear with you. I do not have a problem with Aliyah Boston respecting Kelsey Mitchell. I do not have a problem with her celebrating a teammate's milestone. But when you use the word GOAT in a franchise that has Caitlin Clark on the roster, you are making a choice. You are picking a side, and Aliyah just told the world that she is on Kelsey's side, not Caitlin's, Kelsey's. And that is going to have consequences that this front office cannot ignore.
It's like any business listening, anybody listening to me that owns a business, is that part of the problem of hyper growth as a business, any business, is just getting your damn arms around it. And they have stepped in it so many times, and they beat hockey now, the NHL in ratings. Caitlin Clark is as well known as almost any hockey star. Maybe that's not even arguable. Maybe it's by a lot. She sells merchandise. She moves TV ratings. There's nobody in hockey doing that. And hockey's a legit sport, like it's one of the big 4. So you've got bigger arenas, bigger attendance, bigger revenue, different travel, superstar, massive media criticism. They can't get their arms around it. Like, and if Gordon Ramsay opens a restaurant in London and it tanks, it makes the newspapers. It's talked about. If your buddy Joe opens a restaurant west side of Chicago and it tanks, nobody cares. That's the downside to popularity. It is a privilege to be criticized. It is a privilege to deal with pressure. And I'm just thinking about it this weekend. I'm like, God, they keep stepping in it. It's not like they're a bunch of dummies. I think they have such hyper growth, they can't get their arms around it.
Now let me show you exactly what Aliyah said, because I want every single person watching this video to hear it in her own words. Watch this.
See.
I got one for all of you guys. I know you've all given Kelsey her flowers at different points, but tonight was her 300th game in a few uniforms, so only her and Tamika have done.
GOAT talk. All right, Aliyah. Like I said, I don't know where she stand. Bro. Like,
She said it with cameras rolling, with reporters writing down every word, with the entire WNBA media landscape watching. Aliyah Boston just called Kelsey Mitchell the GOAT. Let me say it back to you in case you missed it, because this is not a throwaway line. This is not a casual compliment. This is a public declaration. Aliyah Boston believes that Kelsey Mitchell, a player who never made the playoffs in 7 seasons, who was playing in front of empty arenas before Caitlin Clark arrived, who has never been an all-star starter, who has never been the face of this league, deserves GOAT talk. Not Caitlin Clark, the player who is rewriting the record books, who is selling out arenas in every city she visits, who is the reason the WNBA just signed the most lucrative media deal in league history. Kelsey Mitchell. And I want you to sit with that for a second. I want you to process what that means for the future of this franchise. Because if Aliyah Boston truly believes that Kelsey Mitchell is the greatest player in Indiana Fever history, then she is telling the front office that she would rather play with Kelsey than Caitlin. She is telling the front office that if they have to choose, she wants them to choose Kelsey. She is telling the front office that longevity and loyalty matter more than talent and impact. And that is a catastrophic misreading of where this franchise is headed. Because let me tell you what happens if the Indiana Fever choose Kelsey Mitchell over Caitlin Clark. They lose the most marketable player in women's basketball history. They lose the player who is responsible for 90% of their revenue growth. They lose the player who is the reason they are relevant again. They lose the player who is the future of this league. And they keep a 30-year-old guard who has never been to the playoffs without Caitlin, who has never moved the needle nationally, who has never been the reason anyone tuned in to watch a Fever game. That is not a difficult decision. That is not a complicated decision. That is a franchise-altering mistake that would haunt the Fever for the next decade. And Aliyah Boston just publicly endorsed that mistake.
So Dan Patrick, you know Dan Patrick, he had scheduled his staff, good staff. They had scheduled Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner of the WNBA. Now, all of us in this business have people bail on us. I've lost people. You know, some people get busy, they forget, whatever, or they just don't want to do it. Commissioners should not bail on scheduled interviews.
Now let me walk you through the tactical failure here, because this is not just about what Aliyah said. This is about when she said it, how she said it, and what it reveals about the internal dynamics of this team. Aliyah Boston is not a rookie anymore. She is not a wide-eyed first-year player who does not understand the media landscape. She is in her second season. She was the #1 overall pick. She was the National Player of the Year at South Carolina. She knows how this works. She knows that every word she says in front of a microphone is going to be analyzed, dissected, and weaponized. And she chose to call Kelsey Mitchell the GOAT anyway. That is not an accident. That is not a slip of the tongue. That is a deliberate, calculated statement. And it tells me that Aliyah Boston has been hearing things inside that locker room. She has been hearing Kelsey Mitchell talk about her legacy, about her place in Fever history, about how she deserves to be paid, about how she deserves to be the face of this franchise. And Aliyah has bought into that narrative. She has chosen to align herself with the veteran guard who has been here longer rather than the generational superstar who is going to define the next era of this league. And that is a failure of leadership. That is a failure of vision. That is a failure to understand where this franchise is going and who is going to take them there. Because let me tell you what Caitlin Clark did for Aliyah Boston this season. Caitlin took the defensive attention off of Aliyah. Caitlin created open looks for Aliyah in the post. Caitlin made Aliyah's life easier on both ends of the floor. Before Caitlin arrived, Aliyah was the #1 option on a terrible team. She was getting double-teamed every possession. She was getting face-guarded every time she touched the ball. She was being asked to carry an offense that had no spacing. No shooting, no playmaking, and she struggled. She had a solid rookie season, but she was not dominant. She was not unstoppable. She was not the player everyone expected her to be. And then Caitlin Clark showed up, and suddenly Aliyah had room to operate. Suddenly Aliyah was getting clean post entries. Suddenly Aliyah was finishing at the rim without 3 defenders collapsing on her. Suddenly Aliyah looked like the #1 pick again. And now, after 1 season of playing with the player who made her life easier, Aliyah is calling Kelsey Mitchell the GOAT. That is not just disrespectful. That is delusional. That is a complete misunderstanding of who is actually making this team better. And here is the part that should make every Indiana Fever fan furious. Aliyah Boston is supposed to be Caitlin Clark's running mate for the next decade. She is supposed to be the defensive anchor, the rebounding machine, the pick-and-roll partner who turns Caitlin's vision into easy buckets. She is supposed to be the player who grows with Caitlin, who builds chemistry with Caitlin, who wins championships with Caitlin. But if Aliyah does not see Caitlin as the face of this franchise, if Aliyah does not see Caitlin as the greatest player in Fever history, if Aliyah does not see Caitlin as the player who changed everything, then how is this partnership going to work? How is this duo going to develop the kind of trust and chemistry that championship teams need? How is Caitlin going to feel comfortable building her future in Indiana when her frontcourt partner is publicly praising another guard as the GOAT? The answer is simple. She is not. And that is the real danger here. Because if Caitlin Clark starts to feel like she is not fully supported by her teammates, if she starts to feel like the locker room is divided between the Kelsey Mitchell loyalists and the Caitlin Clark believers, if she starts to feel like she is fighting an uphill battle for respect inside her own franchise, then she is going to start looking at other options. She is going to start thinking about where she wants to play when her rookie contract is up. She is going to start imagining what it would be like to play for a franchise that fully embraces her, that builds around her, that does not have veterans whispering about longevity and loyalty when they should be celebrating the greatest talent this league has seen in a generation. And when that happens, the Indiana Fever are going to lose the best thing that has ever happened to them. All because Aliyah Boston could not keep her mouth shut and call the right player the GOAT.
Think about it. When have you heard this about David Stern or Adam Silver or Roger Goodell? You only, like, this lady's the only one that runs around doing this stuff. She's the only commissioner that has not leaned into her biggest star. Adam Silver's leaning in to Wemby and Shea Gilgeous and Ant-Man and all that. He leans into the stars. Roger Goodell leans in on Patrick Mahomes, leans in on Josh Allen. Like, they lean in on stars. This is the only commissioner that.
But this is not the first time we have seen this pattern. This is not the first time a veteran player has been elevated over a younger superstar in this league. And it is not the first time the Indiana Fever have mismanaged their roster priorities. Let me take you back to the 2023 season before Caitlin Clark arrived. The Fever were terrible. They won 13 games. They were playing in front of empty arenas. Nobody was talking about them. Nobody was watching them. Nobody cared. And Kelsey Mitchell was their leading scorer. She was averaging close to 20 points per game. She was putting up numbers. But the Fever were losing. They were losing badly. They were not competitive. They were not relevant. And Kelsey Mitchell was not changing that. She was not the reason anyone tuned in. She was not the reason anyone bought a ticket. She was a good player on a bad team, and that is all she was. And then Caitlin Clark gets drafted, and everything changes overnight. The Fever go from playing in front of 4,000 fans to selling out every home game. They go from being an afterthought to being the most watched team in the league. They go from missing the playoffs for 8 straight years to clinching a postseason berth. And all of that is because of one player. Caitlin Clark, not Kelsey Mitchell, not Aliyah Boston. Caitlin Clark. She is the reason the Fever are relevant again. She is the reason the Fever are making money again. She is the reason the Fever have a future again. And yet Aliyah Boston just called Kelsey Mitchell the GOAT. Let me give you another example. Earlier this season, there were reports, and I covered this in a previous video, so if you missed it, go back and watch. There were reports that some of the Fever veterans were frustrated with the media attention Caitlin was getting. They felt like Caitlin was getting all the credit for the team's success while they were being overlooked. They felt like Caitlin was being treated like the savior while they were being treated like role players. And you know what? They were right. Caitlin was getting all the credit because Caitlin deserved all the credit. She was the reason the Fever were winning. She was the reason the Fever were in the playoffs. She was the reason the Fever were relevant. And if the veterans could not handle that reality, if they could not accept that they were no longer the focal point of this franchise, then they needed to grow up and realize that basketball is not about ego. It is about winning. And Caitlin Clark gives the Fever the best chance to win. But instead of embracing Caitlin, instead of rallying around her, instead of recognizing that she is the future of this franchise, we are seeing veterans like Kelsey Mitchell being elevated by teammates like Aliyah Boston. We are seeing a locker room that is divided between the old guard and the new era. We are seeing a franchise that is struggling to fully commit to the player who is going to define their next decade. And that is a recipe for disaster. That is how you lose a generational talent. That is how you waste the best thing that has ever happened to your franchise.
It's like any business listening, anybody listening to me that owns a business, is that part of the problem of hyper growth as a business, any business, is just getting your damn arms around it. And they have stepped in it so many times, and they beat hockey now, the NHL, in ratings. Caitlin Clark is as well known as almost any hockey star. Maybe that's not even arguable. Maybe it's by a lot. She sells merchandise. She moves TV ratings. There's nobody in hockey doing that. And hockey's a legit sport, like it's one of the big four. So you've got bigger arenas, bigger attendance, bigger revenue, different travel, superstar, massive media criticism. They can't get their arms around it. Like, and if Gordon Ramsay opens a restaurant in London and it tanks, it makes the newspapers. It's talked about. If your buddy Joe opens a restaurant west side of Chicago and it tanks, nobody cares. That's the downside to popularity. It is a privilege to be criticized. It is a privilege to deal with pressure. And I'm just thinking about it this weekend. I'm like, God, they keep stepping in it. It's not like they're a bunch of dummies. I think they have such hyper growth, they can't get their arms around it.
And it is not just the players. The front office has been complicit in this mess as well. Let me show you what else came out this week, because this ties directly into the dysfunction we are seeing in Indiana. Colin Cowherd, and I respect Colin, he has been covering sports for decades. He knows what he is talking about. Colin Cowherd went on his show and absolutely destroyed WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert. And he was right to do it. Because Kathy Engelbert has been an absolute disaster for this league. She has mismanaged the Caitlin Clark effect. She has failed to protect the league's biggest star. She has allowed the old guard to undermine the new generation. And now she is ducking interviews. She is avoiding tough questions. She is hiding from the media scrutiny that comes with running a professional sports league. And that is unacceptable. Watch this. Dan Patrick had Kathy Engelbert scheduled for an interview. His staff booked her. They confirmed the time. They prepared the questions. And then at the last minute, Kathy Engelbert bailed. She canceled. She no-showed. And according to Dan Patrick, she was 100 yards away playing golf while his staff was waiting for her. That is disrespectful. That is unprofessional. That is the behavior of someone who does not want to answer tough questions about the state of the league. And Colin Cowherd is absolutely right to call her out on it, because commissioners do not get to hide. Commissioners do not get to avoid accountability. Commissioners do not get to cancel interviews and pretend like everything is fine when the league is in the middle of the most important growth period in its history. Let me ask you a question. When have you ever heard of Adam Silver canceling an interview? When have you ever heard of Roger Goodell ducking a tough question? When have you ever heard of Rob Manfred hiding from the media? You have not. Because professional sports commissioners understand that part of the job is facing criticism, answering tough questions, and defending the decisions you make. But Kathy Engelbert does not want to do that. She does not want to explain why the league was not prepared for the Caitlin Clark effect. She does not want to explain why the schedule was not optimized to maximize Caitlin's impact. She does not want to explain why the referees allowed Caitlin to get physically targeted all season without stepping in to protect her. She does not want to explain why the old guard has been allowed to undermine the new generation without any consequences. So instead of facing those questions, she cancels interviews and plays golf. And that is the same energy we are seeing from the Indiana Fever front office. They do not want to make the hard decision. They do not want to choose Caitlin over Kelsey. They do not want to tell the veterans that the franchise is moving in a new direction. They want to keep everyone happy. They want to avoid conflict. They want to pretend like they can keep both players long-term and everything will work out. But that is not how professional sports works. You cannot keep everyone happy. You cannot avoid tough decisions. You have to choose. And if the Fever do not choose Caitlin Clark, if they do not fully commit to building around the best player they have ever had, then they are going to regret it for the next decade. Now let me show you one more clip, because this is where Colin Cowherd really nails the core issue. He talks about how every other major sports league has a commissioner who leans into their stars. Adam Silver leans into Victor Wembanyama, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Anthony Edwards. Roger Goodell leans into Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. They understand that star power drives the league. They understand that casual fans tune in to watch the best players. They understand that you build your marketing, your schedule, your entire product around the players who move the needle. But Kathy Engelbert does not do that. She does not lean into Caitlin Clark. She does not protect Caitlin Clark. She does not build the league around Caitlin Clark. And that is a catastrophic failure of leadership. Watch this. He is exactly right. Kathy Engelbert is the only commissioner in professional sports who does not lean into her biggest star. She's the only commissioner who allows the old guard to undermine the new generation. She's the only commissioner who acts like star power is a problem instead of an opportunity. And that is why the WNBA is struggling to fully capitalize on the Caitlin Clark effect. Because the person at the top does not understand how to manage hypergrowth. She does not understand how to protect a generational talent. She does not understand how to build a league around the player who is going to define the next decade. And if she cannot figure it out, if she cannot get her arms around the moment, then she needs to step aside and let someone else do the job. And that same energy is infecting the Indiana Fever. Because if the league office is not fully committed to Caitlin Clark, if the commissioner is not fully committed to Caitlin Clark, then why should the Fever front office be fully committed? Why should the veterans be fully committed? Why should Aliyah Boston be fully committed? The dysfunction starts at the top and it trickles down to every level of the organization. And until someone steps up and says, Caitlin Clark is the face of this league, Caitlin Clark is the face of this franchise, and we are going to build everything around her, this dysfunction is going to continue. The division is going to continue. The veterans are going to continue whispering about longevity and loyalty. And eventually, Caitlin Clark is going to get tired of fighting for respect in a league and a franchise that should be celebrating her every single day. Let me give you one more example of this pattern because I want you to understand that this is not just about Aliyah Boston. This is not just about Kelsey Mitchell. This is about a league-wide failure to fully embrace the new generation. Earlier this season, there were multiple games where Caitlin Clark was getting physically targeted by opposing players. She was getting hard fouls, she was getting shoved, she was getting cheap shots, and the referees were not protecting her. They were letting it happen, they were treating it like it was just part of the game, and the league office did nothing. Kathy Engelbert did nothing. The competition committee did nothing. They let Caitlin Clark get beat up all season and they acted like it was not a problem. Now compare that to how the NBA treats their stars. If someone takes a cheap shot at LeBron James, the league reviews it. If someone takes a cheap shot at Stephen Curry, the league reviews it. If someone takes a cheap shot at Luka Doncic, the league reviews it. Because the NBA understands that their stars are their product. They understand that casual fans tune in to watch the best players. They understand that if you let your stars get injured, if you let your stars get targeted, you are killing your own product. But the WNBA does not operate that way. The WNBA treats their biggest star like she is just another player. They let her get beat up, they let her get targeted. They let the old guard take cheap shots at her without any consequences. And that is a failure of leadership at the highest level. And that same failure of leadership is what we are seeing in Indiana. The front office is not protecting Caitlin. The coaching staff is not protecting Caitlin. The veterans are not protecting Caitlin. And now, Aliyah Boston is publicly elevating Kelsey Mitchell over Caitlin. This is a franchise that does not know how to handle a generational talent. This is a franchise that is more concerned with keeping the veterans happy than building around the player who is going to define their future. And that is how you waste a once-in-a-generation opportunity. Now let me show you the final clip because this is where Colin Cowherd really drives the point home. He talks about how the WNBA is experiencing hypergrowth and they cannot get their arms around it. They have exploding revenue, they have exploding attendance, they have massive star power in Caitlin Clark, they have 3 new expansion franchises, they have private jets, they have $1 billion valuation for the Golden State Valkyries. They have everything they have ever wanted, and they are still screwing it up because they do not know how to manage success. They do not know how to protect their biggest asset. They do not know how to build a league around a generational talent. Watch this. That is the most accurate diagnosis of the problem I have heard from anyone in the media. The WNBA is experiencing hypergrowth and they cannot handle it. They are like a small business that suddenly goes viral and has no idea how to scale. They have the demand, they have the product, they have the star power, but they do not have the infrastructure. They do not have the leadership, they do not have the vision. And so they keep stepping in it, they keep making mistakes. They keep mismanaging the moment. And eventually, if they do not figure it out, they are going to lose the best thing that has ever happened to them. And the Indiana Fever are a microcosm of that larger problem. They have Caitlin Clark. They have the most marketable player in women's basketball history. They have sold-out arenas. They have national television games. They have merchandise flying off the shelves. They have everything they have ever wanted. And they are still screwing it up because they do not know how to fully commit to her. They do not know how to build around her. They do not know how to tell the veterans that the franchise is moving in a new direction. They are trying to keep everyone happy, and in the process they are making everyone miserable, because here is the reality. Kelsey Mitchell is not the future of this franchise. Kelsey Mitchell is 30 years old. She has maybe 3 or 4 good years left. She has never been an all-star starter. She has never been the face of the league. She has never been the reason anyone outside of Indiana tuned in to watch a Fever game. She is a good player. She is a solid veteran. She is a respected locker room presence. But she is not Caitlin Clark. She is not the player who is going to define the next decade of this franchise. She is not the player who is going to lead the Fever to a championship. She is not the player who is going to sell out arenas in every city they visit. And if the Fever choose Kelsey over Caitlin, if they give Kelsey the max contract and let Caitlin walk, they are going to regret it for the rest of their organizational existence. So let me lay out my 5 predictions, because I am staking my reputation on these calls, and I want every single person watching this video to save this timestamp and come back when these predictions come true. Mark this video, screenshot this section, hold me accountable, because I am telling you exactly what is going to happen, and when it does, I want the receipts in the comments. Prediction number 1. Kelsey Mitchell will not be on the Indiana Fever roster by the start of the 2026 season. The front office is going to realize, either on their own or because Caitlin Clark forces their hand, that they cannot afford to keep both players. And when they are forced to choose, they are going to choose Caitlin. Kelsey is going to get traded, or she is going to walk in free agency. And she is going to sign with a team that is willing to give her the max contract she thinks she deserves. And the Fever are going to let her go. Save this clip. If Kelsey Mitchell is still in a Fever uniform on opening night 2026, come back and roast me in the comments, but I am telling you right now, she is gone. Prediction number 2, Aliyah Boston is going to walk back these comments within the next 2 weeks. Either the front office is going to have a conversation with her, or her agent is going to have a conversation with her, or Caitlin Clark herself is going to have a conversation with her. But someone is going to tell Aliyah that calling Kelsey Mitchell the GOAT was a mistake, and she is going to issue a clarification. She's going to say something like, "I was just celebrating Kelsey's milestone. I was not trying to diminish Caitlin's impact. I think we have multiple great players on this team." She is going to try to walk it back. And when she does, I want every single person to remember that she only walked it back because she got called out. She only walked it back because the backlash was too intense. She only walked it back because she realized she picked the wrong side. Prediction number 3, the Indiana Fever are going to make the playoffs again next season. And they are going to go further than they did this year. But it is not going to be because of Kelsey Mitchell. It is going to be because Caitlin Clark takes another leap, because Aliyah Boston develops better chemistry with Caitlin, and because the front office finally commits to building around their best player. And when the Fever make a deep playoff run, everyone is going to forget about Kelsey Mitchell's longevity and start talking about Caitlin Clark's legacy. Save this prediction. If the Fever miss the playoffs in 2025, come back and destroy me. But I am telling you right now, they are going deeper, and it is because of Caitlin. Prediction number 4, Kathy Engelbert is going to face serious pressure to step down as commissioner within the next 18 months. The media scrutiny is building. The criticism is getting louder. The mistakes are piling up. And eventually, the owners are going to realize that she is not the right person to manage this hyper-growth phase. They are going to realize that she does not know how to protect the league's biggest star. They are going to realize that she does not know how to maximize the Caitlin Clark effect. And they are going to start looking for a replacement. I am not saying she is going to get fired tomorrow. But I am saying that by the end of 2026, there is going to be serious conversation about whether Kathy Engelbert is the right person to lead this league into the next decade. Prediction number 5. Caitlin Clark is going to win MVP in 2025, and it is not going to be close. She is going to have a better statistical season than she did as a rookie. She is going to lead the Fever to a top 4 seed. She is going to silence every single critic who said she was overhyped. And when she wins MVP, everyone is going to look back at Aliyah Boston calling Kelsey Mitchell the GOAT and realize how ridiculous that statement was. Caitlin Clark is the greatest player in Indiana Fever history. She is the greatest player in WNBA history in terms of impact and cultural significance. And by the end of next season, there will not be a single person left who disputes that. Mark this video. Save this timestamp. And when Caitlin wins MVP in 2025, come back and tell me I was right. Now let me close with this, because I want to leave you with the image that matters. Caitlin Clark is not done. She is not satisfied. She is not resting on her Rookie of the Year award. She is in the gym right now, working on her game, getting stronger, getting faster, getting better. She is studying film. She is building chemistry with her teammates. She is preparing for a sophomore season that is going to shatter every expectation. And while she is doing that, while she is putting in the work, while she is building her legacy, there are people inside her own franchise who are calling someone else the GOAT. There are people inside her own locker room who are elevating a veteran guard over the generational talent who changed everything. And Caitlin is going to remember that. She's going to remember who supported her and who did not. She's going to remember who called her the GOAT and who called Kelsey Mitchell the GOAT. She's going to remember who fully committed to her and who hedged their bets. And when her rookie contract is up, when she has the opportunity to choose where she wants to play for the next decade, she's going to remember all of it. And if the Indiana Fever do not get their house in order, if they do not fully commit to Caitlin Clark, if they do not tell the veterans that the franchise is moving in a new direction, then they are going to lose her. And when that happens, when Caitlin Clark signs with another franchise,